Hi, it's Peggy at Headshots by Peggy, and John SWANBECK is with us again today, and as always, it's going to be amazing. Well, John, I'm so glad that I at least get to see you through Zoom every once in a while, but I do miss seeing you.
Me too. Coming over and doing the vlog was always one of my favorite things, but now this will be my favorite thing until we get back in person.
Exactly. So we were just talking before I hit the record button, and you're keeping pretty busy with online Zoom classes, and you have students now from all over the world. So you're an international coach, or
Yes, well, I am doing coaching as well, and I'm also doing the online classes. And as I was just saying, I have people from all over the world and all over the country: Australia, Spain, Paris, England, Toronto, Vancouver, Chicago, New York, Florida, all over. So it's really fun. It's great to get that mix. It's really great.
yeah, that's, I guess what I keep trying to do is look at the silver lining. I mean, none of us would have ever imagined anything like this, but so much good has come out of it, even if, I mean, if you're willing to look at it, there's a lot of good that's come of it because, who would have thought you would be teaching international classes and, all these things because just realistically with time and travel and that would have been difficult, but this pushed us to the next level. And you were saying that, hey, even when the world opens back up and whatever, if we have a vaccine or whatever the next step's going to be, you're going to still keep at least a couple of online classes because it broadens your base so much.
Yeah, it's really a lot of fun. It's a great format, and the groups are all very collaborative and welcoming. It's really a great experience. The actors, I hear from them all the time, they really love it, so that's gratifying. Um, and yes, it's interesting to have a group of actors from all over the world, and yet they're really they have so much in common in terms of their actor process and their thoughts and their training. They're not really, they're very different as people, but they're not really very different in terms of being actors and artists. They all have the same passions and want the same excellence and all the same standards. So that's really that's really interesting. But yeah, it's great to get people from all over the country and all over the world.
That's cool. So what are we going to talk about today?
Um, well, I don't know. I thought we'd talk a little bit about. I know we talked about self-tape submissions last time we talked, and some ideas about how to do those better. I think we talked more creatively last time, and I'd like to talk more cinematically, as I call it this time. The difference for me between the cinematic and the creative is what the actor will work on in terms of their process and creating character. Cinematically is how to make it work in the film frame. So I thought it would be a good idea, since we covered the first part, the more creative part last time, that I talked a little bit more cinematically this time in terms of what works in the film frame, and it would be really fun for both of us because that's your angle as well with headshots and now your cinematography. Um, I thought it would be really fun for both of us to talk about that.
All right, did you bring us a joke?
Well, I have a joke that nobody will laugh at, although I think it's hysterical. It goes like this: knock knock,
Who's there?
method actor.
Method actor who?
And then I pause for everyone to realize that's the punchline, because
That's the punchline.
no one ever laughs at that joke until maybe a week later. But it's appropriate because method actors, they wait until they feel the moment before they deliver their line. And so punchline of the joke is the person's waiting until they feel it before they deliver the punchline.
Right, right.
That's the joke. I think it's hysterical. It always gets a mixed reaction, but it's appropriate because that's a lot of what and I talk about this a lot. As you know, this is the big challenge for actors is um, knowing how to take their actor process and make it work on camera. And it wasn't designed for camera, and yet they're auditioning for camera jobs, and they don't understand how to take their process and make it work on camera. They're basically announcing, please hire me, I don't know what I'm doing. And so their process is wonderful. They couldn't live without it. Nobody would want them to live without it, but it doesn't translate to the screen because it wasn't designed for the screen. And in a sense, actors need to think like filmmakers. And I don't even mean just directors. I think everyone's a filmmaker, and some filmmakers are directors, and other filmmakers are cinematographers, and other filmmakers are actors. Some filmmakers are sound recordists, some filmmakers are designers. But that's really what an audition is. It's a job interview to be a filmmaker. But because their process wasn't designed for the camera, they don't come across as film artists, if you will. And so that's when they can tend to fall through the cracks. And they are taught that they just need to take care of their process, and a director will come along and make it work on camera. But that's not what a director is doing in auditioning. Directors are looking for someone who understands how to create cinematic art, knows how to create something on camera. So that's why that, even though it gets a mixed response, I still love the joke. I often open my speaking engagements with that joke. So it's great to get the response and the non-response as they're waiting for the punchline. But I was, I've been watching a lot of, we're all seeing each other's self-tape submissions online, and a lot of people are shooting their own things now, which is great, more so than before. When I do my Zoom classes, one of the things that actors tell me they are appreciating about working on Zoom is they're having to think about the camera more, and they're having to think about their sound more, and they're having to think about their lighting more as part of the class. So they're responsible for it. They're having to think more about how they would shoot themselves so that it works on camera, which is great. So that they are actually taking a step towards being more filmmaker-like. But I'm seeing a lot of these auditions and self-tapes on camera, and there are certain things, I guess what I want to do is sort of give your actor viewers a lesson in how to take their work, and like I said, they're waiting for a director to come along and take them by the hand and make their work in the film frame, and I'm going to give them the director's perspective so they can apply it to their actor training, and they can add the half of the element that directors need them to add in order to be more castable on film. And the first one is when they are auditioning for a television show, they'll hear the phrase "know the show." That's a common phrase: "know the show, know the show." And yet, I don't think actors really understand what it means. It doesn't mean to know the themes and to know the ideas and to know even what the story is. Knowing the show means, do you look like you belong in the world of the show? And that's very much in keeping with, do you know the genre of the show? But do you know the world of the show? Do you look like you belong there? Because in television, it's really fast, and They just basically want to, plug you out of a crowd and put you in and play you. It's plug and play, because television is so fast and there's very little process. There's more process in film, but even a lot of film is very fast. And actors need to think about, can they already look like they belong in the world of the show? And so they need to imagine the environment and the story, and the environment of the story, the lighting, the mood, the textures, and this speaks to you, I'm sure. And they need to actually embody those characteristics. So if they can imagine and describe the environment of the story, the atmosphere, the lighting, the mood, the textures, the feel, and they create a human being that embodies those characteristics, and they will look like they belong in the show. And they'll be more castable because they just look like they naturally belong in that world. And it's the same for genre. There's a lot of genre film as well. They need to think the same way. They need to think the same way for genre film. So that's one thing they can do to be more appealing to directors. Just describe the genre or the world of the show as though you're describing a character, and then whatever character you've created, you fold it into the genre or the world of the story, and they're going to look more like they belong on camera. But actors don't think about that a lot of it. Hardly ever do they think about that. They think that the world of the show or the genre is taken care of by just the DP or just the director, but they have to create it as well. They have to embody it as well.
Yeah, if your character is, if the world that this is taking place in is, dark and, dirty and, deep and serious, you don't want a bright lit blue background, happy, bubbly attitude. You may be, you may deliver those lines great, but not for that particular genre or that particular show. So that's why, and I think actors are pretty lucky right now, because whenever there is an audition, they may have never heard of this show before, but they can Google it, they can find it on YouTube, they can find it on some streaming service and watch a few episodes. And if this is a pilot or something, or you can still do research on who wrote it, who directed it, so you kind of know what story, how they tell their stories, so you kind of get an idea what you're walking into. There's no reason to walk into an audition blind in this day and age, or record an audition blind in this day and age, because you literally can do all that kind of research, and find out who's putting this show together. How do they tell stories? Does that match the way I tell stories? How can I complement this? Yeah, I think that you're right. That's really important.
And you don't even have to watch entire episodes. You can go on YouTube and watch scenes.
Yeah.
You can really get the tone and the feel, the texture, the mood of a show.
Just watch a couple clips.
Just a couple of clips. It doesn't really take that, it's not that demanding. But it's part of the research they have to do. And again, they are auditioning for camera artists, film artists. So this research is just as important as the research they do with their scenes. It's the same thing with movies. I'll tell actors all the time, the smartest way to do an audition is to do it like a movie instead of a scene. And they don't think that way. They don't think about how this would play in a movie. And maybe it's because they don't want to do it the way everyone else has done it, or they're trying to be original. I think it's more that their process just doesn't teach them to do that. But they have to understand that filmmakers have been sharing a common language for 100 years, and they use similar themes and similar stories and similar characters, and then they make them their own. And so it's okay to, you're not doing something that's unoriginal. You're doing something that belongs and communicates to that community of film artists that are directors, that you understand their language. I don't think directors think about that directors are actors, that actors think about that their directors are a community of directors, and they may be very repetitive, but they all watch each other's work and they borrow from each other, and then they try to do their own version of it. And actors, if they think this way, will just be communicating to directors, I'm one of you, and it'll be much more passable on camera. I think when they're creating character, the other way filmmakers think is filmmakers, when they think about character, they think about personality. And actors don't think about personality when they think about character. They think about story, they think about the relationship, they think about the themes, but they're kind of taught don't think about character. So if they're trying to think of the fastest way to think about character, to appeal to a director, a writer, and a casting director, all of whom think about character first, is just identify the personality of the character. And it's as though you're writing an online profile for the character. And you just describe the personality of the profile, and then you're going to have the character the way the camera sees the character, the way directors see the character, and then they can fill it. They can fill it with the character's humanity and their own humanity and all the wonderful things they like to do. But you do have to sort of create character the way the camera sees it, and then you fill it like that. And personality is the fastest way for them to do this. When they're doing their self-tapes or anything they're doing, the smartest way to start a film take is with a pause, so that they can start the character before they start the scene. And all they need to do is take 5 or 6 seconds before they start any scene and bring the character to life with some sort of psychological gesture, the touching of a hair or anything, just positioning yourself. And it's a better way to start a take than if they start with just the lines and the words. I always like to say that when a director starts a film take, she or he doesn't call words, they call action. And yet actors, as soon as the take starts, they jump right into the words. And then there's usually a few seconds where they need to get into the scene before they can actually pull it off and get it done. And if they take a few seconds, they're going to relax, and they're going to get into the material better, and they won't be so forced on time. And then I'll be interested in what you think of this one. I see actors when they're moving in the film frame, I always tell them, don't move side to side, move back and forth, because side to side movement is hard to edit on camera. Back and forth movement is easier to edit on camera. And because the film frames come out of the camera like on a conveyor belt. And back and forth movement will sync up with the frames of the camera as they come out of the camera toward the actor. And side to side movement makes you look less like you know what you're doing than back and forth movement, because it's harder to edit. And so actors have a lot of experience. They don't do a lot of side to side movement because it just doesn't work in the frame. And things in the frame also tend to work vertically versus horizontally. So if they can just learn how to move in the frame, they're going to look more like they belong on camera.
I think what I always suggest, and maybe you'll disagree with me, but I always think it looks better when it's almost a diagonal. Like if you're wanting to get from the right edge of the frame to the left edge of the frame, don't walk straight across, but maybe come forward towards it or backwards, away from it. Is that kind of what you were talking about, or you're saying just straightforward and back?
You were saying, yeah,
Kind of at an angle, more of a, if you're at this end of the frame and you're trying to get to this end of the frame, kind of more of a, either a forward or a backwards, kind of an angle, not a straight on or a side to side. But are you saying that a front going back and forth is the best way to move?
well, it's just more natural on camera. If they're going to at least going from cross angle looks more real, but there's that sense of they're trying to move in the frame and fill the frame and be naturalistic in the frame, so they have a lot of fuzzy movement, and back and forth movement is more composed.
The other thing that people need to do, especially when you're doing self-tapes, is take some time and mark out where you're in frame. Know how close you can get before your head cuts off, and know how far back you can get and where, so that you don't do a whole scene and then finish it and go look at the camera and realize that the whole scene was shot, with half your face out of frame or something. So
Right.
I always suggest, if you're doing it yourself, because, a lot of times you don't have somebody else in the house that can, like, hey, you're out of frame or whatever. So just put, pieces of paper on the ground or tape or whatever you have, so you kind of know where you're at and be aware of what the camera is getting and how you look.
Right.
Walk back and forth, look around, and then go back and look and see what that looks like on the camera.
Yeah, well, I think that's really important in terms of movement. Just because, you know from composing people in the frame, there's certain ways you compose people in the frame. And I just had an actor talking to me today about this, and it reminded me of you. You were talking, I forget who you were talking about, but you were saying that somebody was leaning forward on camera, and it looked strange. I forget who we were talking about last time, and I was talking to an actor today who wanted to know if they want the camera to understand what they're feeling and thinking, do they need to lean forward? And if you lean forward, it looks very odd on camera if the camera's set, and it diminishes you in the film frame. And so, again, they want to move naturalistically. They don't understand that when somebody says, "What's my frame?" or "What's my framing?" why they're asking that is because they want to know where to stand versus how much room they have to move around. So again, I think that's one of the good things about Zoom is people are starting to learn that. I have to educate people about that when I'm in my Zoom sessions, where I tell them, you can't be in the center of your frame and have all of this head space above you. You want your eyes just above the horizon. So they're learning a little bit, but I find that to be an issue with actors when they just want to move freely in the film frame. They tend to look unnatural there, although they're trying to be natural.
Yeah, and I think the angle of the camera, and there's so many things that play into what attitudes and feelings you get. If the camera's a little bit above eye level or a little bit below eye level, those are like gives off a subliminal message that you don't realize. But I mean, experts have figured this out, and it's things that professionals use all the time, whether they shoot low, kind of up, or whether they shoot eye level or a little above eye level. There's a reason for every single one of those actions. So if you're sitting back and all unengaged, it's going to have that feel, versus if you're confident and you're impactful. But then what are you trying to say? Because there's no this is the right way or the wrong way. It's this is the right way to portray this, and this is the wrong way to portray that. So you have to really kind of start thinking about, And you can do that with trial and error. You do something and then you look at it and go, well, that's weird. I look frumpy. I thought, you know, I was strong and powerful in this. And then you adjust your body and the camera angle, and it's like, oh, okay. It wasn't my acting, it was the angle and, you know, the way I was standing. So
That's I completely agree. That's a really good point. You know, actors go into auditions, and what they like to do is they like to sit square on, like face the camera, like square, you know, like almost like they're being good students in the classroom. That's how
yeah.
they like to audition. And they like to have the other person exactly across from them so that they can make eye contact to connect as actors. And I try to get them to understand that, first of all, you know, if you're directly in line with the other person, that's usually not as interesting as if you're both a little angled, because it looks more like a movie if you're both a little angled. But they like to be sort of straight on. And instead of sitting square in their chair, they want to do exactly what you just said, which is think about angles and lines. So instead of sitting square, you know, the bottom part of my body is on an angle like this. Maybe the top part of my body is on an angle like this. The head's on an angle like this, and I look more interesting on camera, more photogenic. I think it makes you look more like you're either a natural or have experience, because anybody who has experience on camera knows those things. So if they think about cross angles and lines, like you were just talking about, and they're going to be more appealing to a director, even if the director or casting director doesn't sit back and say, I know what they're doing and I know why they're doing it. The actor will just seem more natural. And so they'll be more appealing.
Exactly. And everybody can be trained to look like they're a natural.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if I ever talked about this, but back in the studio days, a million years ago, you know, first part of last century for the most part, when when actors would go through the studio system, which eventually broke up in the 60s, and actors were so happy because now they were freed from the studio system. Um, when they went through the studio system, they would have different classes every day. And they'd have a here's how you talk on camera class, and here's how you walk on camera class, here's how you sit on camera class. And then there would always be an actor process class, a method class, if you will. And they would do that all day long. But when the studio system broke up, all of the classes went away except for the actor process class. How to sit on camera class went away. How to talk on camera class went away. How to sit on camera class, how to position yourself, all of that went away. And so all that was left was the actor's process, and actors were more free, but they didn't look like they belonged on camera anymore. And so no one wants to take the process away from them, but that's all they were left with after the studio system broke up. And so they stopped creating cinematically, and they created more, you know, in terms of the process. And all they need to do is get that back, because again, they're auditioning for the job of a film artist, a filmmaker, who's also an actor. And it would be like me going in for a job interview to be an accountant and saying to the person, I just need your help with the math. It doesn't make any sense. Who would hire that? They wouldn't hire it if they were producing a film. But like we said, maybe Zoom is going to educate them a little better for how to think about the camera. That would be really great. Especially because there's a lot of really good actors that I see, and they fall through the cracks because they do an audition and they're advertising, I don't know what I'm doing. And they do know, and they are really good. So nothing to bring that back. Um, Going back to my other joke, actors have to they have to learn to, very simple, they have to learn to have conversational flow. my joke about the method actor and the long pause, they love to take a moment before they do every line. And that, that basically gets in the way of what they're trying to create. So they need to bring a more conversational flow to it. Conversational flow is just the way human beings create. You and I have been talking. We talked in the beginning before we got started, and we've been talking during it. We'll talk afterwards, and I don't think we'll pause once. But actors, they're pausing all the time. And it's one of the biggest indications that I don't know what I'm doing. It means I'm just bringing the process to the table and I'm not worried about the audience, which was my method acting. And it's very simple if they just have more conversational flow. They're not going to lose anything. It's actually how their work is going to gain traction, pick up speed, build a wave, and take off, and then unleash emotion. The more air they put into a scene, the more pauses they put into a scene, the more the scene deflates. Because it's like you have to push a rock back up the hill before every single line. And they get no conversational flow. And conversational flow is how human beings communicate. So if they want to create real human beings, and everyone, that's what we're all obsessed with, is creating real, creating real, creating real. If they want to create real human beings, then they have to have more of a conversational flow the way human beings do. It's one of the things that is a dead giveaway that an actor isn't ready, is all of the air they put into the scene, all of the pauses. Some scenes require pauses. I get that. But for the most part, the scenes are conversational. And actors need to bring that sense. But again, they were taught that every moment is really important, every moment is really precious, and they need to take a lot of time with every moment. And so they come across as actors in an acting class instead of actors who look like they should be on a set shooting something. And again, I see too many great actors who just they don't know how to move on their own from the process to the film frame, and they're going to fall into the cracks. It's interesting because actors are always trying to be real with their moments, and yet when they try to be real, they end up being really not interesting, because it feels real to them, but it doesn't come across as believable to the audience. And they have to make that leap. So they can't confuse feeling moments real and creating a real character. Those are two completely different things. Creating a real character and real emotion is completely different than an actor feeling moments are real or feeling a scene is real before they play it. Because they feel it's real inside to them, but they never communicate what their choices are to the camera because it's enough for them. They think their job is to have it feel real to them, but it stays inside of them and it never is communicated to the camera. And so it's really not interesting. And it may be right, but if they want to be interesting on camera, they want to be more concerned with being interesting than right. And when I say that to actors, they ask me all the time, what's the difference between being right and being interesting? Being right is the right choice is the expected choice, and the interesting choice is the unexpected choice. So again, their wonderful process gets the first half of the equation where they get it right, and we all have to get it right. But they need to bring the interesting choice to the right choice. So they're making the right choice, but then they're making the interesting choice. Because competition is fierce out there, and when someone auditions actors for something, they see a lot of actors, and everybody starts to blend in with each other, and nobody's a standout. The only people who are standouts are the people who make interesting choices, and interesting choices are unexpected. So if they want to make interesting choices, make unexpected choices. As long as they don't violate the story and violate the character and violate the material, there's a lot of choices they can make. because they're really concerned with making the right choice, and I don't blame them. They're trying to honor the writing and honor the writer and get it right. Everyone wants them to get it right, then they stop there because that's what they were taught, get it right. But on camera, I mean, you know this from being behind the camera all the time, interesting is much better. Interesting is more memorable. And it's not just interesting to be interesting. It's an interesting choice that comes out of the story and the character. But the guidelines for how to make an interesting choice are unexpected. Something the audience doesn't see coming. The script's written one way and the actor plays it just that way. That's an expected choice. The audience isn't going to be surprised and they're going to watch it passively. What interesting does is interesting pulls us into the film frame, pulls the audience into the film frame and catches our attention so that we are involved. Just like it does in an on-camera audition, a self-tape audition. Interesting is what's going to make people say, oh, wow, that's interesting. And then I'll keep watching. And the actor needs to back it up with substance. But when they're picking choices for how to play scenes, there's a lot of different choices they can pick that are not going to violate the material. And interesting will win the day every single time.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's very, very true. You know, nobody wants to sit for 2 hours and be able to call everything that's going to happen. You know, you want that something to draw you in and keep your attention, and you know, otherwise you're just sitting there, you know, waiting for it to be over. Oh yeah, that's I knew that was going to happen, and it's just not fun. It's not. You're not going to want to go back. You're not going to want to finish watching it. You're not going to, you know, talk about it the next day. You know, it's going to be something that you watched, and you don't think about it again the second that it's over. And that's not what we want. We want something that you remember, that you talk about, that you know, wake up thinking, oh, remember yesterday that thing we watched. That's what makes it good.
Right, and it's not the final product that we watch, it's the audition too. I mean, that's what's going to make the director, you know, when she or he is lying in bed at night trying to imagine their movie, whose audition are they going to remember? They're going to remember somebody who got it right, but then made it interesting. And actors are they're very obsessed with getting it right. Just getting it right. And then leaving. And there are great actors out there who need to start thinking about what the camera finds interesting, and embrace that as much as they embrace their process. We live in a camera world now. We don't really live as much in a theatrical world. Somewhat we do. We live in a camera world. We work in a camera world, and they need to develop what I like to call cinematic thinking to go along with the rest of their process. That is the big disconnect for actors. They can do it. It's art. It's not rocket science.
That's right. It's an art. It's an art. Love your art. Have fun with it. I think having fun makes you interesting. If you're loving what you're doing and you're having fun, it shows. If you're passionate about what you're doing, it shows. If you're involved and you're doing it, it shows, and it makes it interesting. If you find something funny and you laugh at yourself while you're doing it, it makes it interesting. I mean, there's been tons of things just in normal conversation. You'll say something as a normal human and you'll think, I can't believe I just said that. And, you know, and you make some weird face and you keep going. And that's what you want to see in an audition. Not that you messed up or said, but that you were so in the moment that you felt it. You know, your emotions were going in the same direction as your words, and it shows. The camera picks all that up. Absolutely does.
I think that's a really good point, because I don't know if you're talking strictly about this, but one thing actors don't do with auditions is they don't entertain. And because they hate the word entertain or entertainer, they don't want to be thought of as an entertainer, they want to be thought of as an artist. But the word entertain, if you break it down um, into its roots, it means enter. It comes from Latin. It means enter, which means to pull in, and tain, which means hold people there. So entertain means to pull people in and hold them there. And that to me sounds like great art. But actors, they don't entertain with their work. And directors are not looking for great actors. They're looking for actors who entertain us with great acting. And actors all want to be artists, so they're all deadly serious about everything. And again, they're obsessed with being real in the way they're taught. And they don't ever think about the entertainer part of the equation. And I mean that in the best possible way. It means entertainer is, it's part of the art form. It's what moves the audience so that they can then, teach the audience or inspire the audience with their truth. But the audience needs to be pulled into the story. An entertainer doesn't mean make a lot of jokes. It really means that you're doing it for the audience more so than you're doing it for you. And actors leave that out of the equation. And directors want to be entertained by great actors. A director's job is to create entertainment, even if they're creating great art, because nobody in the audience is going to go see it unless it has the entertainment. I can't even say the word because I know when I say the word, actors are cringing. Every actor watching this is cringing. How dare he say that word? We're not that. But they have to understand, like I said, what it really means and the effect it really has on the audience. It's what inspires the audience so that you can move them with your art. And actors don't think that way in auditions. So they come across as really deadly serious artists, acting class artists only. And what a casting director or directors are going to respond to is someone who entertains with great acting and isn't just concerned with being a great serious actor. That's a big thing I think that is left out of the equation. And directors love it because when I like at the beginning I said, do it when you play a scene, do it like a movie instead of a scene. I'm just talking about entertaining as a great artist. And that's why directors will respond to it. Because when you take your great, serious, artistic acting and think about entertaining us with your great, serious, artistic acting, it'll look like a movie. And if you understand the frame, it'll look like a movie. And actors don't do that. So they don't. So the directors or casting directors are watching their auditions and they're not inspired. So if they're not inspired, they're not going to hire them because they know that, as you said, the audience wouldn't be inspired.
Right.
So directors do need that half of the equation. Camera half of the equation, thinking like a movie half of the equation. They absolutely need that part if they're going to get hired. And if they started to think that way, their numbers would improve dramatically because they're really good actors. Really, there are so many really, really, really good actors out there, great actors. And this is what we're talking about is the big disconnect. And their numbers would change very quickly if they're getting any audition opportunities. And there are a lot of audition opportunities out there now. I think their numbers would change.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think
I think they would change drastically.
Yeah. Well, as always, John, you had lots of cool stuff to say. Do you have anything else, any other points you want to make before we wrap it up today?
I could go on talking, but maybe we're out of time.
Well, we can, we can talk all day. So,
No.
yeah.
If we've reached our time limit, that's okay. I think I need to redeem myself with a better joke, though.
Okay, let's see if you can pull off another joke.
Okay, see if I can remember. I wrote it, so I should remember. So an actor walks into a bar and sits down and starts reading a script. And the bartender comes over and says, what are you doing? And the actor says, oh, well, I have an audition and these are my sides. And it's for a movie. And the bartender says, what kind of a movie? And the actor says, it's a thriller. And the bartender says, hey, I like a good thriller. I'll tell you what, you read the scene for me and your first drink is on me. And the actor goes, okay. And the actor reads the scene for the bartender. And when the actor's done, the bartender says, And the actor says, what's wrong? And the bartender says, well, for the thriller, it wasn't very thrilling. And the actor says, oh, well, my job is to be real. It's the director's job to make it look and sound thrilling. Now, how about that drink? And the bartender puts a glass of water on the bar.
Yeah.
Didn't get a laugh, Peggy. Didn't get a laugh.
That's so true, though. That's so true. You know,
we were talking about.
It's exactly what we were talking about. You know, it's the actor has to make it thrilling, or make it, you know, and instead of giving water performances.
Instead of giving a real drink, they got a glass of water. That's right.
I'm going to start calling that water performances when I'm doing somebody's self-tape, a client comes in or something and it's horrible and I can't say that, I'll say, would you like a water? And I'll know that I'm making fun of them. And no, I won't do that.
Exactly. So that's an appropriate joke to end our discussion.
It is. That was great. Well, I know everybody loved this and got tons of great tips. Make sure that you leave comments and let us know what you want us to talk about. John's on every single month. Normally the first week, sometimes, you know, it's tough now that we have quarantine and we have all these meetings. It's almost just as tough to schedule a time now as when we were running around busy on our real world. But
well, that's very
theory.
I'm the one. I mean, I definitely rescheduled one of the times. And I think you rescheduled first, and I rescheduled maybe once or twice. But we're all home all the time, and all we have to do is turn on the computer. Why are we being late for meetings? Why are we having to reschedule?
I don't know what's going on. But in theory, John is the first Thursday of every month, but in practicality, he will be on every month, and that's all I can promise. So, but yeah, anyway, but leave comments if there's something that you want us to address directly. If we get enough comments and questions, we might just do a Q&A kind of situation where we take comments and answer questions. So leave your questions, and then we kind of accumulate some, and we'll take time and just kind of, I'll read the questions and you can answer them, and we'll do an entire vlog of that. I think that would keep us busy.
Great.
So make sure that you follow John on all of his social media. I'm going to have all the links below. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this. And most importantly, have an amazing week, and I'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.